Chapter 9 is looking at race, ethnicity, and immigration, and it begins by discussing what a minority group is. And this is a category of people who have unequal access to positions of power, prestige, and wealth in a society and who tend to be targets of prejudice and discrimination. Minority status is not based on numerical representation in society, but rather on social status. And what I mean by that, class, look at females in the United States. They are a numerical majority, but yet they hold a minority status. The reason being is they just don't have the power and the privilege. So it kind of goes back to what the definition of a minority group is. Now, a racial group is a category of people who are believed to share distinct physical characteristics that are defined socially significant. Some examples, class, would be skin color, hair texture, eye shape, and of course we can go on and on and on with other physical characteristics. Ethnicity refers to a shared cultural heritage, nationality, or lineage. It does involve language, family forms, food, art, ancestral origin, and we can go on and on and on with examples of ethnic groups as well. There's been many patterns of racial and ethnic group interaction throughout the world. Genocide is the most extreme form of racism. This is annihilation of an entire nation or people. And it gives some examples there of how Hitler led the Nazi extermination of 12 million Jews during the Holocaust, and of course there are other examples as well. Mass expulsion occurs when a dominant group forces a subordinate group to leave the country or live only in a designated area of a country. A good example of this was the 1830 Indian Removal Act, called for the relocation of eastern tribes to land west of the Mississippi River, and in class we refer to this as the Trail of Tears. Segregation is the physical separation of groups in residence, work, and social functions. There are two types of segregation, and of course we're talking about involuntary. Voluntary segregation is going to depend on a group of people that desires to live separate, such as the Amish community. But we have de jure segregation and we have de facto segregation. De jure segregation is by law, de facto is in fact. The Jim Crow laws that separated blacks from whites were upheld by 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court decision. And I want to say, although de jure segregation is illegal in the United States, de facto segregation still exists in the tendency for racial and ethnic groups to live and go to school in segregated neighborhoods. Acculturation is adopting the culture of a group different from the one in which a person was originally raised. It may involve learning the dominant language, adopting new values and behaviors, and changing the spelling of the family name. Pluralism, this refers to a state in which racial and ethnic groups maintain their distinctiveness, but they respect each other and have equal access to social resources. And class, to give you an example of pluralism. If you've ever been to any large cities where there's Chinatowns or Little Italies or Spanish Harlems, it shows that people can hold on to their cultural heritage and still participate in the institutions of society. Assimilation, this is the process where groups merge and become integrated as one. We have primary assimilation and we have secondary assimilation. Secondary assimilation occurs when different groups become integrated in public areas and school institutions such as neighborhoods and schools and workplaces in the government. And primary assimilation occurs when members of different groups are integrated in personal associations, as with friends, family, and spouses. The first census came out in 1790, and it divided the United States population into 4 different groups. We have free white males, free white females, slaves, and other people, including free blacks and Indians. And class, it goes through and shows you some other history, okay, if you will, of the United States Census. As you see, according to the United States Census data on race and Hispanic origin, it is Hispanics or Latinos that make up the largest ethnic group in the United States. Looking at stereotypes, these are exaggerations or generalizations about the characteristics and behavior of a particular group. Negative stereotyping of minorities can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is a process in which a false definition of a situation leads to behavior that, in turn, makes the originally falsely defined situation come true. So class, if you tell someone you're stupid, you're dumb, you're ugly enough, they're going to begin to believe it. Now, there is a difference between prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice is an attitude or a judgment which is usually negative about an entire category of people. And discrimination is actions or practices that result in differential treatment of categories of people. So class, racism is discrimination based on race. There are different types of discrimination. Certainly we have individual discrimination. This occurs when individuals treat persons unfairly or unequally due to their group membership. We have adaptive discrimination, which is discrimination based on the prejudice of others. We have overt discrimination, where the individual discriminates because of his or her own prejudices. Institutional discrimination occurs when normal operations and procedures of social institutions result in unequal treatment of minorities. So class, you can be prejudiced and not discriminate, and you can certainly discriminate without being prejudiced. Before the 1968 Federal Fair Housing Act and the 1974 Equal Credit Opportunity Act, discrimination against minorities in housing and mortgage lending was rampant and blatant. Banks and mortgage companies commonly engaged in redlining, and you need to know what redlining is. This is the practice of denying loans for the purchase of houses in minority neighborhoods on the premise that the financial risk was too great. And then, of course, we have geographical racial steering, where they discourage minorities from moving into certain areas by showing them homes only in minority neighborhoods, and of course there's other situations as well. Hate crimes are acts of violence motivated by prejudice or bias. They include intimidation, destruction, damage of property, physical assault, and murder. I want to say since 1992, the majority of hate crimes have been based on racial bias. There are many motivations for hate crimes. They are of three distinct types. We've got the thrill hate crime, which is the most common hate crime. It's committed by offenders who are looking for excitement, and they attack the victims for the fun of it. The defensive hate crimes, the offenders view their attacks as necessary to protect their community, their workplace, or college campus from outsiders, or to protect their racial and cultural purity from being contaminated by interracial marriage and childbearing. And the mission hate crimes are perpetrated by white supremacist group members of other offenders who have committed their lives to bigotry. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is a United States federal agency charged with ending employment discrimination in the United States. It is responsible for enforcing laws against discrimination, including Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act that prohibits employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Affirmative action are policies and practices in the workplace and educational institutions to promote equal opportunity as well as diversity. The largest category of affirmative action beneficiaries is women.